lovely to see faces who've been to many of these conversations and also some new faces. That's delightful. And so thank you for joining us today. And uh, when it comes to the We're All Related speaker series, this has just been a really wonderful experience for us. I believe this is our fifth conversation, fifth or sixth, and they've been very enriching. And Pat is going to introduce Marian to us today.
Okay. Before I introduce my dear friend Marian to all of you, I'm going to do an opening. So I had the privilege and permission to draw comments from Jubilee Gift website, of which Marian is associated with. I would like to share some of them with you, followed by a short time of quiet reflection around a question. On their website, they state, there is a need to find new ways forward in this time of upheaval and great transition, which requires us to intentionally protect what is precious, sacred, and most beautiful about our humanity, in joyful right relations with the earth and with each other. Because money is the world's most significant unconscious agreement and perpetually fortifies scarcity and separation, we are called to reimagine it. Let us take now a few moments of quiet reflection on how we are being called to reimagine the manner in which we receive and distribute abundance. Since this has been Marian, the answer to this, not the answer, but the question has been part of Marian's and others that she knows question for many, many years, motivating them to radically look at money, how it divides us and how it brings us in right relations, and how to distribute that. So with that, it is with great honor and deep regard for my dear friend, Marian Moore, who's accepted the invitation, which I consider sacred, to spend time with us today. Her spirit and generosity has sustained my journey for many years. She and others through Jubilee Gift continue to be present in establishing right relations. In her bio for this Zoom, she shares she is part of two communities, Jubilee Gift, with whom she is working to reimagine money. What is the consciousness that guides our relationship with money, and protect the sacred? And the second relationship is with Jubilee Justice, which is focused on land, race, money, and spirit. Marian will begin a conversation time with us, with her sharing and pausing during her sharing to respond to your questions or insights. After about 40 minutes or so, I will close our time together with a quote, and Susie will then introduce us to our speaker in November. So with that, Marian, I'm delighted to see you again, to be with you, and to invite you into this circle of wonderful women who are great listeners, and I know will receive a lot from you, your life story, and your action regards to that life story, sweetie.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and what an honor. I mean, I met Sister Pat in 1990, if you can believe it, on an airplane, on our way home from the first meeting I'd ever been to be part of a community, which really opened the door for me to this inquiry. And so, Pat, you've sort of been a fellow journeyer with me, even though we had a big gap of 20 years or so and just got reconnected a year ago through serendipitous, shall we say, spirit-guided circumstances. And so I've heard about her community, but it's always been kind of invisible to me. So what a pleasure to behold all of you who have devoted your lives as you have. So I guess this work is kind of unusual. People will often say, well, what do you do? And I'm like, how do I even begin to say? Because it's really been me following the thread. I love, Pat, that you said we're in an inquiry, because that is what it is. You have an inquiry and you just keep following it and keep going deeper and deeper if you're lucky. But I tell them that this inquiry, I feel, started because my parents, as I mentioned in the bio that you received, where my dad was an Episcopal priest and then bishop, and my mother was also a devoted spiritual social justice warrior, as my dad was. And so I was raised to show up where there's injustice. And I was raised really to be an activist on the one hand, and then on the other hand, they were both people who had inherited money, and I was due to inherit money, but there was never a conversation in the family about what do these two different inheritances of money and of these deep values of justice, how do you integrate those? And that, I was lucky in my early 30s to be introduced to an organization called the Threshold Foundation, where a lot of people who, similar to me, had inherited money and also had this deep calling, a spiritual calling, a calling about justice and how to live in this complex world. And so that really opened the door, as I said, to this work. Fast forward, I spent decades working with, I became a facilitator and a coach, convening people to really deeply and honestly grapple with, many people inherited money, many people made money with their business success. And they were stuck, as we all are, in this culture where money separates us more than brings us together. And for a long time, my work was about having people look at where their money is invested and how that might be at odds with what, say, their philanthropy is doing or what their values are. That's now become known as maybe impact investing, but still there is this disconnect. And so as I did that work, and there, 100 stories to tell you about that work, but we don't have 100 hours, so I'll keep sort of leaping forward. What we discovered was that the beliefs were so entrenched that it was very hard to get people out of the mindset that the purpose of money is to make more money. So we would say, someone might have a beautiful vision for their philanthropy. And we would say, but over here, you're investing in such and such that is causing some of the problems that you're trying to address. And they would say, oh, but I need to make a return so that you can do more philanthropy to start to try to solve the problems that the investments are, perpetuating. Anyway, so that's where this idea that we needed to really address the consciousness, the beliefs, the mindset, if you will, around money. And so with Jubilee Gift, which is a collective of people who are both wealth holders and what we call wisdom keepers, which would be people like you, people who have devoted themselves to the life of spirit and other ways of knowing and prayer. And we are in this inquiry about how do we, even in this system that we are part of, the story, the dominant story, how do we make a new story even within that? A lot of times the rules, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but just by way of having an example, the rules, for instance, of the IRS scare people away from doing things that they would naturally do as a human being. So, like giving gifts to other humans. Like I have one client that I worked with, and she did end up giving significant gifts, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, to individuals, some of which they got to keep for themselves and some of which they would put into the world as gift. And she didn't care about the lifetime giving allowance for whether you would pay taxes on something. In other words, I don't want to get too into the details, but the point is that sometimes these systems that we're taught through what the IRS says becomes the tail that wags the dog. And we really want to, at Jubilee Gift, lead with how do we have money be an expression of love and connection? And how do we develop trust between people so that we don't need all of those rules? That's often why these rules are made. We must have this kind of an agreement, even in philanthropy. You need to prove to me that you spent this money in this way. Well, if I trusted you, I wouldn't need that, excuse me. So there are various examples of ways that we are practicing, but I guess before I speak anymore, I'd just like to hear if any of you have particular things, reactions, reflections, experiences yourself that resonate at all with what I've been saying.
Well, if I could just jump in just shortly to share what you representing others have done for the Mendota group. It's as simple as this. The basis I find Marian's journey is about storytelling and connection. So I invited Marian over to my apartment to meet the tribal chair of the Mendota group who were seeking an office space. Marian sat with Sharon for about an hour and a half. They exchanged stories. 2 days later, or 3 days, shortly later, Marian actually asked for no information whatsoever other than the storytelling piece, mailed Sharon a check for $18,000. That's Jubilee Gift.
So I will tell you just briefly, thank you for that example, because that's always helpful, right, Pat, to have concrete examples. That came out of our collective of Jubilee Gift, which again is people who don't have money and people who do have money. And one of our members told a story of in her family how she wanted an allowance when she was a little, but her family was from India and her father was horrified. And he said, what, in our family, there is no your money or my money, there's our money, and it's in the third drawer in the dining room. And you take that money when you need it, but you're aware of what others need also. So we decided to make our own third drawer. And so on the full moon in July, the buck full moon, we all sat in prayer in our various places and attuned to what kind of gift we wanted to put into the third drawer, put those gifts in as little as $44, as much as $70,000. And then the only requirement for any of us to then make a gift out of the third drawer was that it was to protect the sacred, and all through relationship and no applications needed. But in the example Sister Pat gave, we have this 30-year relationship. She has a long relationship with Sharon. I heard Sharon's story. I trusted. And so I was able to do that. And Sharon didn't have to jump through hoops and prove her worthiness. So.
And what I love about that too, Marian, is that the connections that you continue. Could you just share a bit about your journey with the Native people, with your personal journey in helping the Native in the Southwest?
There's multiple locations, but I think you're talking about the Muskogee people that I met through my work, and they are reclaiming land from where they were kicked out of in 1836. What was originally Muskogee homelands is now Alabama and Georgia. And it seems Spirit brought us together, and we've been in this long journey together for four years. Just following relationship, and a lot of money has been brought to them through these relationships where doors were open, and it's all very mysterious, and people seem to be like one example was that this woman ended up meeting them and was moved by their story of starting an eco-village on their ancestral homeland. And she had never met an Indigenous person. She wanted to give. She pledged $250,000. Come to find out, when she went to visit them, they looked at the genealogy, and her ancestor was related to the ancestor of the matriarch who had just died 2 weeks before this meeting occurred. So it's those kinds of, like, follow Spirit, and just, it feels like miracle after miracle after miracle. And with money being able to be in service of that, it's so different from how people think of money as poison, as unsacred. It's like everything in the culture has us separate money from what is sacred. Yes, Elizabeth.
I don't know if this is appropriate to ask a question at this point, but
Please.
what you're saying is really a little bit mind-blowing, because we're used to accountability. In other words, if we give $10, we don't care, but large gifts that we are looking to give, or scholarships to people who are looking for scholarships, is the accountability part of this. And I think that's why we ask all those questions that we do ask. And also the point of, is this going to really make any change, or is this just giving money and who knows what happens to it? And so could you kind of speak to how that works? Because I think we can think of a lot of areas, especially I just recently moved to Dubuque, Iowa, and there's lots of things going on here that we could fund. Anyway, so that's my.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up such a good point, and people have all of their cautionary tales. But But this experiment that Elizabeth mentioned about, it's called the Trust Web, where this woman had inherited money and she was tired of just making decisions based on applications, that seemed impersonal. And she invited 2 women to help her give away this money. And then they did a little bit of it. And then they felt also like, we want to be in deeper relationship. They ended up each choosing 3 people. And we did this through prayer and meditation. They each chose 3 people. And each of these people was given money for themselves and to give away. But what I've seen, because of the trust that was placed with them, and the money was given, but also a lot of care was given about how the money and about help being supportive of the people as they journeyed with the money, both in the giving it away and using it for their own personal lives, that the way they are in the world has changed. And so now they can bring that, and now we're actually talking about how to bring this story further. But it's like their consciousness changed, their sense of abundance changed. Instead of, I feel like a lot of what happens in conventional philanthropy is people just still don't, there's not a lot of dignity. And it's still sort of this whole, I am the benefactor and you are the, supplicant, in a way that I think is dehumanizing. And in fact, we're at the end of a course that we've been doing with Jubilee Gift called Sacred Philanthropy, trying with people who are philanthropic professionals to try to support them to bring more of who they are and not just think they have to follow those rules. That gets to that unconscious agreement that is based on mistrust. Not like there aren't sometimes good reasons, but let's see if those are appropriate to the situation. Does that sort of answer your question, or at least speak to the? Are there other questions or thoughts or challenges even? Yeah, Sandy.
Elizabeth's question very specifically addresses a committee that I'm on, because we make grants. And as I was listening to her and as I was listening to you, I thought about this old saying that gifts don't have strings, or they're not gifts.
Mm.
And I think to some extent, when we as a community are giving grants, we have invisible strings.
Mm. Right.
Because as I deal with other committee members, especially now that we've had some new people come on, they're worried about, well, maybe, how are they going to use it? Well, they're going to dig toilets. Come on, they told us they need toilets. They're going to dig toilets. But still, there's that tendency to want to pick at it to make sure they are really worthy of the gift.
Right.
And if that's our position, then we've got all kinds of strings.
Right. And I think sometimes the strings are even invisible to us, right?
Oh, they are. Oh,
yeah. I mean, not just invisible, but yeah. So I think that's really astute of you. And also, I like to then go to them, to the next question, why, keep challenging those assumptions that we need to know.
Well, I think it comes from this notion that we are stewards of our money and we want to make sure that it's going to go to the people who really need it. And that so far, as in my 3 terms on the committee, I cannot honestly think of a single group who got money from us who didn't need it or deserve it. Sometimes we say no to people if we think, it's not what we're about.
Right.
But I do think that we need to, as a committee, we need to look at what we're asking and why we're asking it.
Right.
Marian, with regard to Sandy's and Elizabeth's, it's my sensibility that from the videos that you've given me of people of wealth discussing the struggle that they have within our culture with recognizing that they're not stewards of this money, but they are the keepers of the story. They're the ones that are touched sacredly by a story, and because of that, they release energy. So could you speak about the change of consciousness that is needed to move beyond or move within a culture that is so uh, not consciously aware of not money as money, but money as energy? Could you say something about that?
Well, you can probably say as much about that as I, Pat, just for starters. But um, yeah, I mean, there's also, let me see if I can speak to that specifically. That thing that our teacher Orland Bishop says, that money is the world's most significant unconscious agreement. So we've just agreed that money is a certain way. And so what happens if we shift what we think it's for, and we have it be an energetic expression, the way that love, I mean, do you have a committee to decide who it is you will love, because who is going to be worthy of your love? No, you love who you love. And so, I mean, I guess that's for me, a way, because that's an energy, right? We all agree love is an energy. And so I have been trying to really shift, and it's not like easy. I mean, because the conditioning is very deep, but all of you have strong spiritual lives. And so for me, it's like partly bringing the money into everything else that I consider in my spiritual prayer life. And then that's what, I mean, these things, these ineffable things are hard to talk about, hard to describe. But if I sit in prayer with the thinking of the various relationships and the money and the different people I'm in relationships with and the flow of money, miracles do happen. People open, things flow, relationships connect. And I guess, I don't know if that at all addressed your question, Pat. Maybe you want to share something about your experience of money as energy.
Well, I think both as part of the culture in which we abide and operate and receive money from our donors, that we really haven't really opened the door to the spiritual concept of the money piece.
Right.
To reintroduce to people who trust us with their money, as people trust you as a group,
Yeah.
that this is a new way. This is a reimagining of how we're going to do this, and we just have to build more depth in our action around trust,
Yeah.
and shift our consciousness that we aren't white women holding money for people who don't have money. That kind of consciousness has got to be changed. I mean, somehow we've got to build the links of interrelationships where people, when Joanne hears a story that she can dip into and ask for, like we do with the Margaret Mann Fund and the Local Needs Fund. We got to make that even bigger, and we have with the large gifts. recently, Marian, I think you're aware that a large gift was given to the Mendota people here from our community just a month ago of $250,000. I guarantee, I can honestly say, sisters, the energy of that money, just with its breath of saying, and from yours too, Marian, breath of just acknowledging them as a people, it has broken open this whole Twin Cities area. People gasp when they hear that it was just given without any strings attached, just that they believe in this community and they're willing to walk with them through whatever challenges they have. But that's a huge, I mean, I acknowledge our community to go to that large gift. I hope it goes across the board that we do just large gifts. But the way in which you struggle in reimagining this, and not only that, but organizing it. I mean, the spiritual component has to be there.
Yeah.
It's just not reorganizing money, Marian, is it? It's got to be in our veins and in our. We've got to have the meat to it or something. Maybe you can say more now. I'm going to keep
Yeah.
quiet.
When someone was at our a gathering of Jubilee Gift, he was like, "There's something happening here, but I don't know what it is." And it's spirit moving in this realm of money. And then what you were saying about the reaction to the gift that you all made, that doesn't surprise me. If the gift is given as an expression of spirit and love and relationship and trust, people rise to that and then are able to be more than they ever thought that they could.
Mm-hmm.
And then to your point, Pat, about, white women, I mean, as a white owning class person, I've had to do so much work to dismantle this belief that somehow I am in, I must know because I have the money. And a lot of people that I'm in relationship with who have money, go, well, it's actually not my money. And if we think of money in that way a little bit more, as energy and as that, whether you call it being a steward or a channel, it just gets way more fun too. And I have not had bad experiences with someone, sometimes we're like, oh, I mean, we're very free about this third drawer, but we do have someone who is sort of the minister of that, writing the checks. And if she'll get a request that doesn't feel quite right, she'll write to some of the others of us and we have a council and we go, oh, what doesn't feel right? And instead of then making a rule, we talk to the person that made the recommendation. We say, tell us more. Something feels funny about this. And so we rely very much on our intuition and our sense of knowing in other ways, as opposed to the rules in the book and we must follow the rules. It's much more relational. We need to be relational. We're going to get out of this pickle that we're in. Yes, Jackie.
This is related to what you just said. When I don't have control over any money, I can request money for different reasons, and I do frequently because of my past ministries with people in Ghana and people in Mississippi and Tennessee. When how do you handle when you apply for assistance for someone over a period of time, and the assistance comes, and then for example, a scholarship, it takes longer for the person to complete everything. And you get to a certain point and you get a denial of support. And I'm dealing with that right now with one specific person who has no money to do her last year of nursing school.
Mm.
our last 2 semesters. And there's if there was some dialogue about that, the people who made the decision might make a different decision. But once the decision is made, it's reported, and there's no conversation. And right now, I haven't told the person yet because I looked for another way to get the funds, and that didn't work either. So I've exhausted the last that I can, and so I have to tell her there is no money, and I know she has no access
Wow.
to any funds.
And it was because she didn't follow the rules
No,
properly?
no, well, she didn't finish. She had received 6 grants, okay, over the years. One was to get you don't want this whole long complication.
Okay, but anyway.
I know all the details. I
Yeah.
could have, and I thought all the details were clear, but evidently there weren't. But the question I'm asking is about the dialogue. You just, if you're responsible for dispensing funds and you reach a point where you have questions, you don't know about the legitimacy or whether this
Yeah.
should continue, then
Yeah.
could we build into our system some kind of dialogue before a rejection of something is decided?
Yeah, that sounds like the humane way to go about it, right? Where everybody has dignity. And the whole thing, I guess, it's sort of, are we creating conditions for separation, or are we creating conditions for relationship? We are all related. Speakers series we are in right now. I don't have an answer to that specific situation, obviously, but I think, Jackie, you're right, that if you can build in more relationship, it's better. And there are different experiments and practices that people, that's another thing, like, we don't know what will work. But so to be willing to experiment and not just follow the rules because those are rules seems like a legitimate path forward. Yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think part of it comes as I was listening to Jackie, and I've heard this before, that we don't want to be taken advantage of. I think underlying this is the feeling that these people keep coming back and back because individually we might have had that experience, of being taken advantage of. And at what point do you say you have to do this on your own? So, I don't know, but I worked in a service agency for a period of time, and there were people that would keep coming back and back, and we would begin to question, are they working towards improving themselves, because that would be the goal.
Sure.
And we were making the judgment, in a sense. We were making the judgment they are not improving their lives, and so why do we keep giving them money? So I don't know if that is our underlying concern.
Yeah, and then I guess it requires looking at what does being taken advantage of mean? If someone is in need and you're the place where they have had the need addressed in the past, but maybe money isn't solving the problem, so what else is needed? And just to be in relationship about that, instead of, I think that thing that can happen is just like, we're being taken advantage, and then we just get hard. And because we've made a decision that they're taking, advantage of. I have a young man whom I know who needed a loan for a car. I'm like, I don't do loans for cars. But anyway, long story, I got involved in that. And, He doesn't pay the monthly thing all the time, but I just really am trying to have the practice of finding out how is it, treating him as a dignified human being. And anyway, being in relationship, which isn't always tidy, right?
We're coming down, I'm sorry to say, to Marian, to another limitation we have, which is time. I know you've introduced us to a depth of awareness. Not only have introduced us, but I know you have a workshop. I mean, you have a way of training people, organizations, to understand money in new ways and to facilitate that. So, that's something too that you offer. I just want to commend you personally for your awakening,
Thank you.
your and others' awakening, not only yourselves, but also others, to potentially becoming in relationship with each other.
Well,
Realize-
Pat, when I
Mhm.
think about my own personal journey, you may or may not know this, but after you and I met and I was able to get some funding from Threshold for your circles, your restorative justice circles, but then I gave a personal gift to you, which was the biggest gift I had ever given. And it was because I trusted that we were brought together on that airplane for a reason and that it just kept making sense. And so it was really a gift to me to meet someone like Pat that I felt that level of trust with. And as you can imagine, the reciprocity has been extraordinary over the decades and continues. She won't stop giving me gifts.
Yes, that's so true. I met her on the plane, and next night I was at her house, and she funded me for my journey, my ministry for a number of years after that. And without anything other than we became friends. So with that, are there any other questions for Marian? I certainly can supply information for further conversation. I'm sure Marian would be open to have further conversations with any one of you at any time around this.
Thank you all for taking the time and interest in hearing a little about this work and for all of your work and paths, details of which I know nothing, but I can imagine.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would just like to close then our time together with a quote from a Mohawk elder. And these are his words. Now you will feel no rain, for each of you will be shelter for the other. You will feel no cold, for each of you will be warmth to the other. There is no more loneliness, for each of you will be a companion to the other. Go now to your dwelling places to enter into the days of your togetherness, and may your days be good and long upon the earth. And Susie's going to share with you about our next, we are all related speaker.
And I think I will depart and just with gratitude and blessings on your journey with money. That's the other last little thing I would say. Money is so taboo. Nobody ever wants to talk about it. Everyone gets scared to talk about it. And that's really, I think, one of the main things is to really unearth what all of those assumptions are about it. So I hope you can do that as you go forward. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marian.
Thank you for being here. So, and thank you all for coming today and listening in. And our speaker in November will be Sherry Warren. And as many of us know, Sherry is a BVM associate. She was companioned by Mary Martin there on our screen. And Sherry used to be a Clark College professor. She is going to be presenting to us in November. I believe it's November 12th.
Yes, that's it.
And that'll be at 3 o'clock, which is a Sunday afternoon. So we're kind of following our model and going with there. And so Sherry's going to share a little bit of her work that she does. A lot of her work that she does for the UCC Church on a national level has to do with working with gender issues and gender concerns and affirming. We all hope to see you there.